right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Everyday Editing, Real-World AI Strategies for Work. This is the very first webinar that we've put on as AI for Editors, and I'm so excited to get started and to introduce you to the people who are going to be sharing their knowledge with you. But first, I have a couple of announcements, beginning with another AI-related webinar that you can go to this week. This Thursday, August 28th at 1 p.m. Eastern, there is another AI webinar. This time it is hosted by Dragonfly Editorial, a B2B content agency that has served as a good example of how to thoughtfully and ethically incorporate AI. I will put the link to register in the chat in a moment, so you can have that ready, but I highly recommend that you check out this webinar. Here's a little bit of a blurb about it. In 2022, ChatGPT burst onto the scene, shaking up the worlds of writing, editing, and design almost overnight, and it hasn't slowed down since. Like a snake shedding its skin, AI keeps evolving, becoming more powerful, more useful, and yes, more unsettling. Join Dragonfly's president, Samantha Enslin, for a hard but hopeful look at where things stand in 2025. She'll cover the biggest developments from lawsuits and copyright fights to the latest editing, writing, and productivity tools, exploring the risks of AI model collapse and digging into growing environmental concerns. She'll also discuss how human creativity and machine intelligence may just be able to work together to create something new and wonderful. You'll leave this session with a clear view of today's AI landscape, plus practical tips for using AI in your own work. I hope that you are able to check that out on Thursday with Samantha Enslin and Dragonfly Editorial. Here are upcoming AI for Editors courses. If you don't know what AI for Editors is, I'll tell you about that in a moment. It turns out that we have sold out of the next introductory AI for Editors course. The next one after that starts November 11th. And the advanced level, which begins next week, still has some room in it. If you have already taken the introductory AI for Editors course and you would like to register for the advanced course, you are still able to do that. And you can find out more at aiforeditors.com. These courses are each 7 lessons taught live virtually with recordings available. No matter what type of editing it is that you do, there is much that is relevant to you. Plus, you'll be in a supportive cohort with editors from across the globe who are eager to learn alongside with you. I hope that you check that out as well. And without further ado, I would like to introduce you to the wonderful, amazing, and incredibly intelligent plus talented people we have here today. You will be learning from Marcella Fecteau Weiner. Marcella is a freelance nonfiction editor with more than 20 years of experience. She specializes in early childhood education and edits books, teaching resources, and curricula for education publishers. Marcella integrates AI tools into her workflow to enhance efficiency while maintaining editorial integrity. She began exploring AI in early 2024 after taking the AI for Editors course and has since continued her learning through courses, webinars, and hands-on experimentation. She shares what she learns through her Editing with AI blog, and is committed to helping editors navigate the evolving landscape of AI with confidence. And I will be sharing information or a link in the chat where you can sign up for Marcella's blog. I highly recommend that you do that. She posts good stuff in there. We also have with us Kristen Tate. Kristen launched her editing business, The Blue Garret, in 2015. She works directly with authors, providing developmental editing, copy editing for fiction and creative nonfiction. She is the author of Novel Study, Decoding the Secrets and Structures of Contemporary Fiction, and she writes twice monthly newsletters for word workers, full of craft, advice, cheerleading, and reflections on how to balance life, work, and words. I will be sharing links about where you can learn more about Novel Study, the book, and about Kristen in a moment. We were supposed to have Chris Wood with us to talk about B2B AI uses. Unfortunately, Chris was unable to join us today as a panelist, so you have a mystery guest. Surprise, surprise. That's me. I'm stepping in. I'm stepping in today to not only moderate our conversation, but to share an exciting AI use case that I think many of you are going to find intriguing and hopefully helpful. So here's a little bit about me. My name is Erin Servais, and I help editors, writers, and content teams upskill with artificial intelligence. I am the founder of AI for Editors, and I've written about AI and editing for the Editorial Freelancers Association, for the Independent Book Publishers Association, and the Center for Information Development Management. I have taught copy editing for the University of California, San Diego, and I have served on the board of ACES, the Society for Editing. I speak frequently about AI in content development, and I presented for the Book Industry Study Group, the Women's Media Group, the Professional Editors Network, the Northwest Editors Guild, and the University of North Carolina, UNC, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill School of Journalism. Since launching the AI for Editors courses, and more recently, Servais Strategic Business Solutions, which is how I bring custom AI training to organizations like yours. Please let me know if you would be interested in talking to me about that. But since launching AI for Editors in 2023, I have trained more than 1,000 editors across the globe, including 20 plus countries, including Liechtenstein, which I am rather proud of because I feel like that is a hard country to reach because there are not very many people there. So 20 plus countries, including Liechtenstein, and I've taught people how to use AI tools safely and effectively in their publishing workflows. We will go ahead and get started now with our presentations. We are having Marcella talk about nonfiction editing, and we'll have Kristen talk about fiction editing, and then I will share a surprise with you at the end. So let's go ahead and begin now with Marcella Fecteau Weiner talking to us about nonfiction editing.
Thank you, Erin. I am one of the 1,000 editors who Erin has taught about AI. I took her first course in January 2024, and then I took her advanced course in January 2025. And I'm really excited to be here and share what I've learned about AI and how it helps me with my work. As I mentioned, I'm a nonfiction editor, freelance editor, and I work primarily with early childhood publishers. You can do next slide. So I'm going to talk about two tools that I use in my workflow as a nonfiction editor. One is editing for parallel structure, and the other is a copy editing reference list. In the examples I'm going to share with you, I use ChatGPT, but I've also used Claude, EditGPT, and Draftsmith. And I want to note that I'm using the paid version of all these tools because I think I get better results. Okay, so let's start with editing for parallel structure. Next slide. So this is an excerpt from an activity book for teachers that I worked on. This activity book was 50 STEM activities for preschool teachers and included pretty long lists of materials for each child and teacher. On the left is the type of list I wanted. I wanted the bulleted items to be parallel in structure. I wanted them to start with a capital letter. I didn't want ending punctuation. I wanted the numbers to be numerals, and I wanted each item to start with either a noun or a verb. On the right is what I would get usually. So this book had different authors, so the lists were all over the place. Sometimes they had ending punctuation, the capitalization was all over the place, and sometimes they started with verbs. So if you have lists like this and they're very long and you have 50 of them, they can be pretty time consuming to edit. So I decided to ask ChatGPT to help me with that, and I wrote a prompt for it. All right, next slide. So this is my prompt to ChatGPT. In the orange box is the actual prompt that I wrote. On the left are things that I just want to point out. I began my prompt with ChatGPT with some context. So who am I and what am I doing? I'm editing a teacher resource book and it includes 50 activities. Then I include instructions. Now I could just say, please make these lists parallel in structure, but I find that if I spell out what I want ChatGPT to do. So for example, in the list that I was working on, I wanted everything to start with either a noun or a number, capital letter, no ending punctuation, numerals. I find that you get much better results if you spell out exactly what you want. I also gave examples I like and I don't like. Again, you don't have to do that, but if you're using a prompt over and over again and it's going to have different types of material, I find that it's really helpful to give examples that you like and you don't like. At the end, I put a reminder. I say, follow these instructions to create a parallel list, and then I have this prompt, and then I would just paste in the text. Okay, Erin, you can do the next slide. So this is on the top is the original list I gave to ChatGPT. On the bottom is the edited list. ChatGPT did exactly what I asked it to. It started each item with a capital letter, noun or number. It got rid of the ending punctuation, and it even caught typo. I didn't ask it to fix my typos, but it did, and I was pretty happy with that. I don't always like when ChatGPT goes off on its own, but this was a good example for this. So you can see how you can use this kind of prompt for all kinds of parallel lists. Let's say, for example, you have a book with all these subheadings and you want them to each start with a gerund. You could do that. If you have a bulleted list, and you have items and you want them to follow a particular format, you can create the prompt to make it match what you want your results to be. So this is one example how I use ChatGPT in my work. And the next example I'm really excited about, and that's with reference lists. Okay, next screen. Okay, so before ChatGPT came out with its newest version, which I believe was, I think, early August, I was not happy with using AI tools for reference lists. I found that it just created too much work for me. There was too much cleanup. It would hallucinate. It didn't follow formatting rules. Now it works really, really, really well. And I'm going to share the prompt in the other slide, but I just want to go over some best practices for creating prompts for reference lists. First, you should include 1 to 3 sample references in your target style. That could be AMA, that could be APA, that could be Chicago, or your house style. The next thing, like I shared in the parallel structure prompt, you should state the style and key formatting rules clearly. ChatGPT and other AI tools know what Chicago is and know what APA is, but I find it's really helpful if you just state some basic rules. And then finally, provide the original references exactly as written. AI works better with raw data, so don't try to clean up at all, just give it as the mess. All right, so let's look at a sample reference list. Could you do the next slide? So this is a sample reference list. This is just a small excerpt. This is something I would actually get in a reference from an author. I'm following Chicago style here, but you can see the underlying errors. There are a lot of mistakes. There's capitalization where there shouldn't be. There's some text that needs to be italicized. There's an ampersand, it should be an and. There are dashes where there should be end dashes. So there's a lot of little details that need to be corrected. And if you have a really long reference list, this can be very time consuming. So then I turned to ChatGPT and I wrote a prompt. And okay, next slide, please. So this is my prompt to ChatGPT for reference lists, and there's a PDF that Erin will drop in the chat of this prompt, so you can just copy that from there. So the prompt is in the orange text, and on the left are things I want to highlight. Again, I give it instructions like I did with the parallel structure prompt. I wanted to follow basic formatting rules, and then I give it examples. You can put examples for the kind of items that are in your reference list. So the reference list that I was working on included a lot of journals and books. So I gave it specific examples so it can model from that. That's how ChatGPT and other AI tools learn by modeling from what you give them. And then I also, if you look at number 6, missing data. I don't want ChatGPT to hallucinate or make things up. So I ask it to let me know so I can fill in that information. And then after those examples, I provide more instructions, what I want it to look like when it presents it to me. For this example, I'm asking it to put in a table so you can see the difference, but you don't have to do that. You can just say, please follow the instructions above. And then I finalize my prompt with, here is the reference list. And I'll paste in the reference list. But I do that so that I can reuse this prompt later on if I have another reference list and just tweak it that way. Okay, so next slide. So these are the results. On the left are my original references that I showed you in a previous slide, and on the right is what ChatGPT returned to me. It did exactly what I asked it to. It changed capitalization to match CMS. It got rid of the ampersand, replaced it with an and. It added italics for journal articles. And at the bottom one, it even put the note in that I asked it to. It told me that it should confirm the first full name of that author. So I actually just used this prompt or a variation of this on a project I was working on last week. And it was about 10 pages of references. And I was amazed at its results. I mean, there was some cleanup, but not that much. And I think I estimated it saved me about 7 hours of work. So it was a really quite amazing. I had to set up the prompt, but again, it's something I can reuse again. 2 things I want to note about using ChatGPT for reference lists. First, you need to always double check your work. I mean, even though it's good, it's not perfect. And that's, your job as an editor is to check your work. And second, that I found it works better if you chunk out text. So I tried it originally with that whole long reference list and it just froze on me. It just like, nope, not doing this. But if I chunked it out to like 20 references at a time and put it in, that worked marvelously. So it actually, it actually made editing reference lists even a little fun. So I just see a thing. I'll look at the questions later on. It's gonna be hard for me to look at the chat. So those are the 2 ways that I use ChatGPT as a nonfiction editor. And now I think my part is done. I'm going to pass along to Kristen. I'll be happy to answer questions in the Q&A.
Well, thank you so much, Marcella. I learned something about how to improve my referencing prompts. So I always learn from Marcella, and it's wonderful to be able to learn from other people too, especially whenever you spend so much time teaching other people about it. We can teach people and we can learn at the same time. Isn't that wonderful about life? Anyway, thank you. Before I pass it on to Kristen to tell us a bit about what we can do as fiction editors using AI, a quick note. If you have questions, I'm seeing some people putting questions in the chat that you should be able to see a separate Q&A tab in your Zoom screen. Please place your questions there so they're nice and organized for whenever we get to the Q&A at the end. That note being said, I'm going to go ahead and welcome Kristen Tate to enlighten us about fiction editing.
Hi, everyone. I've already learned from Marcella's presentation as well. And I just want to say I also took Erin's course and it was tremendously helpful. But a kind of hidden advantage of taking her course is that you then get access to her community of people who have taken her course, and people are in there sharing their use cases and prompts all the time. And these tools they are changing week by week and month by month. And so having access to that kind of updated information is really helpful. All right, can you get to my first slide, Erin? Thank you. I don't want to add to Erin's introduction, but I will just say, just for, so people know it, I'm a fiction generalist. I work on a range of genres. You can see some recent titles I've worked on there. And I do both developmental editing and copy and line editing. And increasingly, as I'm working with authors who have put out, several or even dozens of books, I'm doing kind of a combination of both. I'll do a line edit with content notes for specific sections that need additional work. And that's one example I'm going to be showing you today. Before I get into talking about how to use AI tools for consistency checks, I just want to talk a little bit about my personal AI ground rules. And I think as editors, we all need to develop these for ourselves, especially among fiction authors. Feelings run very, very strongly about these tools. Personally, the way I approach that is I don't consider it my job to change anyone's mind. My job is to find out where my clients are on that spectrum from, being completely 100% opposed to any kind of use of AI tools in their work for themselves or for my work with their work, to people who are using the tools themselves. So I find out, where they are with that. I have a very robust AI policy on my website. I've given you a link there for this presentation that includes links to everything I'm going to share today. And I know you're going to get the slides at the end as well. So take a look at that. Feel free to be inspired by it, but I try to over communicate to people. And I make sure if I am going to use one of these tools that I have the author's consent. I tend to gravitate towards using Anthropic's Claude, in part because their privacy policy is written in plain language, and it states very clearly that they will not be using uploaded material to train future versions of the LLM. And for my clients, that tends to be very, very important. And once they are reassured with that, then some of them feel more comfortable with me using the tools. So that's what I'll say about that. Next slide, please, Erin. Okay, so consistency checking I think it's one of the most crucial jobs that a fiction editor can do. I have seen all kinds of things from a fight scene where we have 10 soldiers walk in, a few of them are killed, and then somehow 12 soldiers walk back out. I've seen tattoos change from one arm to another. All kinds of things go on, and authors are thinking about a lot of different things, including the kind of artistry of their lines and other things, and so they just miss these things, and these are the kind of mistakes that they hate to make it into the finished book, and and when readers catch them, it really pulls them out of the novel. So these are areas where we can really be a hero. At the same time, this is very mentally taxing. You're trying to keep a lot of things in your brain at one time. And actually, this is a thing that AI tools are very good at. So I often use these tools when an author has given me permission in two different ways. So I use them to kind of check behind me. And when I run into a case where I want to compare, say, a chase scene that is happening in the same location in two different scenes, making sure that everything lines up. I will use it to check for that. So Claude, like ChatGPT, has a kind of what's called projects. I think it might be called something different in ChatGPT, but it basically allows you to give the tool a role that you can then use for multiple tasks or chats. And I've given you here my current project instructions. I'm always going in and tweaking this, but I essentially give it a role to play. I tell it it's a skilled, experienced editing assistant, and I tell it a little bit about how I want to operate. Claude also allows you to add to what it calls the project knowledge base. So I have a sample style sheet in there, and I have a Google Doc that, again, I'm always kind of tweaking and adding to about just how I approach editing. And so it will draw on those materials when it's carrying out a task for me. And then I have a sample task instruction here. I'm going to show you a more detailed example in just a minute. But this one is what I often do when I am building a style sheet. So if an author has given me permission to upload their manuscript, that's usually one of the first things I do is have it create a first pass style sheet for me. I do that in chunks. I have it create a character list first, and then I have it create a timeline, and I put those in my style sheet, and then I'm checking it as I go along. And increasingly, I am finding it, Claude is able to do this with zero errors. Sometimes the outputs are, sometimes it's a little overeager, let's say, and it might include things that I would not necessarily include, but I'm happy to have more rather than less. And then here are just some use cases that I've used. I will use it to kind of go behind me and make sure that, basic character traits haven't changed. For fantasy novels, so helpful to just have it pull out a list of all magical items or spells that appear in a novel. I often find for my authors who are creating the magic system as they go, will have a lot of like kind of single use spells. And sometimes it can actually be better to kind of, package those together into spells that can do a few different things and they can use in multiple books. Finding Chekhov guns. So these are, if like an item has been mentioned in Act One, something's got to be done with it by the end of the story. And I will often spot those, and Claude can catch those as well. Geographical and setting consistency, as I mentioned, sex scenes. So making sure that once the sweater comes off, it stays off and there's not like a random third arm that has somehow crept into the scene. Although I will say my romance authors are actually pretty correct most of the time. You can catch, especially for mystery novels, you might be able to catch open story questions or loose plot threads or red herrings that haven't been cleared out of the way. So those are just some ways that work very effectively. All right, next slide, Erin. All right, let me walk you through a specific example that, this is an edit I did earlier this year. The book is actually coming out next week, I believe, or the end of this week. It's Deception's Edge by Nanette Potter, and Nanette has been kind enough to allow me to share this with you. I reassured her that this audience of editors will not think that she's a sloppy writer because of these, consistency errors, but applaud her for hiring a line editor who will catch these things and make sure that they are fixed in the final text, which she did. So just to give you the lay of the land, the sequence I'm talking about is kind of the climax of the novel. It's a thriller. It's happening in a stadium in North Korea. This character Chase has been taken hostage. Blade and Finn have been called in to try to rescue him. This dude Alec is on a redemption arc, and he has managed to insert himself in there too to try to help them. And we have Ming, who has been recruited to create a distraction during her performance. We have multiple point of views, and this takes place over a couple of hours, and we're hopping from one point of view to another. So as I was editing, we have Alex's point of view first in the stadium. He's hearing various things happening as he's maneuvering around and finding a hiding place. He hears the national anthem. He hears some Russian dancers come on stage. Then we hop over to Blade and Finn, and I realized right away that there were some consistency errors there. Like they were hearing the national anthem at a time that didn't line up with what we saw from Alex's chapter. So I went ahead with my line edit, knowing that I was going to have to come back and do some consistency checking work. Once I got to the end of that sequence, I realized that, what I would do as an editor then is go through that entire sequence again and make a very detailed list of all the things that happened, so I could make sure that they lined up, and then do a third pass essentially on that section to add some comments guiding the author through the changes that needed to be made. But I thought, I bet Claude can do that interim report for me. And Erin, can you forward and we'll see what Claude did for me. So I've given you the prompt there. I'm not going to read it for sake of time, but you can see I just use plain language. These are not, I didn't do any prompt engineering. I tend to craft these per the project I'm working on. I use dictation also. I use a great tool called Whisper Flow, and there's the next slide mentions that. So I just dictate into Claude, tell it what I want, and then I have a conversation. And actually, if you go to my that website link, I've linked to the entire conversation there, so you can read exactly what happened and our back and forth. But I've shown you a snippet here of what it provided, and this actually blew my mind. It was very detailed to the extent that it makes a distinction between times that are mentioned in the text of the novel and times that are just approximated, or we can kind of infer from other clues. It tells me what point of view, the information is coming in, what location it's at, the event, and what chapter it's in. So I was essentially, this saved me probably an hour or two of work. I was able to go straight from this list, and it also provided me a list of things that it thought were inconsistent, which turned out to be 100% accurate. I was able to take that list, go back into my novel, and very quickly just add those comments. As you'll see, if you go to my website and click into this chat, you can also, Claude gives you the option to make any chat publicly shareable. So for an author like Nanette, who is very detail oriented, and I knew she would want to see this report so she could kind of make her own choices about how to handle her revisions, I was able to very easily just share this with her without pulling it out and putting it into another format. So this is my use case. And then Erin, if you'll go to the next slide, I just have some general tips that I've discovered as I'm working with the tools. And this is a tip that Marcella gave as well. So work in steps and scaffold as you go. So rather than trying to do a whole project all at once, kind of break it down into subtasks, and I find it generally does a better job. Similarly, upload smaller chunks rather than a full manuscript if you're doing something really detailed like what I showed you. For example, I worked on a zombie novel where there's, I was wanting to do that kind of geography check and make sure things lined up. So I just pulled out the relevant chapters and gave it those rather than uploading the full manuscript. I also tend to, I have some prompts that I use over and over again, like the ones I use to create a style sheet, but most of the time I just customize it for each project, because then you can kind of tweak it to what you're really getting after. And that's that Whisper Flow dictation tool that I mentioned. It's context aware and kind of works the way you've always wanted dictation to work, and it never has. It's pretty magical. And then be careful not to overwhelm an author with analysis. So know if you have an author who's going to want to see those reports in that work product, or if this really is just kind of work product for you, and your author really just is going to want to know how to fix it in the comments. So just be careful to not overload them. And then, my current MO in working with these tools is I pay attention to when I'm getting bored. If I run into something that feels boring, or, I was thinking this when I was looking at Marcella's example about the reference list, if I can feel my wrists hurting, I think, can an AI tool save me some of the detailed editing? And if I have permission, then I just try it out. And with that, will hand it back over to Erin. I'm happy to talk more about any of this when we get to the Q&A.
Thank you very much, Kristen. I am so eager to learn what our fiction editors or perhaps editors of very detailed nonfiction books might think about the possibilities that she showed you. I officially have goosebumps, and I've tried prompts like that, but I love the table format. It's just incredible, Kristen. So thank you so much for sharing that information. And if you have any questions for Kristen, put them in the Q&A. I am going to try to go through my special edition surprise information quickly so we can get to those questions. I thought about including this because, well, I taught this last week at the Outdoor Writers Association of America, or Outdoor Writers of America Association. Can't quite remember in which order the last two A's come in. And it was a big hit. And I thought that there are so many use cases for this, no matter if you do B2B editing, B2C editing, what kind of editing you do, I think you can find a way to adapt this for your work. And it's the idea of creating a chatbot that is a simulation of an ideal reader, or it could be an ideal customer if you are writing for a brand or editing content for a brand. Don't worry, you don't have to code this, not using ones and zeros and brackets. You create this using plain language, like Kristen was mentioning. You saw in her example, she just used plain conversational language, and you can do the same thing to build what I'm going to show you. And you can build this in ChatGPT or in Google Gemini. The process is quite similar. Things you can use it for, well, you can test content with it. If you use an ideal reader, ideal customer, what do they think about the content? You can brainstorm ideas with them. You can identify audience pain points and even get feedback on pricing. There's so much that you can do. It's a very versatile tool for every stage of your workflow. Let's get into it. For that presentation I did last week, I created an ideal reader for this as yet pretend magazine. I think it should exist. So if you want to create it, you have my blessing, because I think it needs to be in the world. It's Outdoor Adventures for Indoor People. It's the magazine for anyone who loves the idea of nature more than actually being out in it. We're going to build an ideal reader chatbot. So let's get to know this ideal reader. Meet, oh, wait, no, not Erin's Servais. Not the ideal reader. I mean, Sharon Mervais. Not me, not like me at all. Sharon Mervais. Who is this ideal reader, Sharon Mervais? The first step in building a persona is defining their core demographics. This gives the AI a solid foundation in who this person is, and it helps them to generate more realistic conversation from them. So here's some core demographics for this Sharon Mervais. She's 40-ish. She lives in the Twin Cities, and let's say that she is a corporate IT manager. Next, we would define her internal world, her hobbies, backyard bird watching and drinking pumpkin spice lattes, which is something that Erin Servais does not do, by the way. No judgment, just fact. Goals and needs, like feel like outdoorsy adventurer without needing bug spray, as well as pain points. Those are important, like sweating is a pain point for this ideal reader, and potential biting and buzzing wildlife within 800 feet. Buying behavior, for instance, Sharon eats lunch at a sidewalk cafe and calls it foraging. This tells the AI more about who this ideal reader is, so it understands whenever it speaks as if it is this ideal reader. I won't walk you through the ins and outs of how to build the instructions for the chatbot because we're keeping it very high level here. I more just want to show you the possibilities, and you can look into it later if you'd like. I teach people to build the instructions for this type of chatbot or any type of custom GPT or Gemini Gem, this mini AI tool, by including these 4Ps. I call it the 4P framework. There's persona, giving the AI a role to play, purpose, telling it what job it's supposed to do, process, which is telling it how to do the job, and pattern, explaining how it should respond, what its output should look like. This is helpful for building tools like this, but also these are good elements to include in any kind of prompt in general, not just a system prompt for a more advanced tool like this. Since we talked about Sharon's persona, I wanted to show you what it looks like in the actual instructions for this chatbot. You can read it here. I'm not going to go through it word for word since we have time limits, but it gives you a general idea of what's in there, that she's an ideal reader of outdoor adventures for indoor people, that she's mildly anxious about dirt, bugs, and sweat, and that she loves thinking about outdoor adventure. One way that we can use an ideal reader chatbot is to test content. And that's what we'll do with Sharon. We are going to test this article with her. 5 daring yet shockingly doable ways to touch grass without dying. Here is the article text. I think this is hilarious. I would read this magazine. Let's be real, you love nature as long as it's on screen or filtered through a bird feeder, but sometimes you feel that wild itch to connect with the earth, whatever that means. Fear not, bravish adventurer. Here are 5 gloriously low-risk ways to touch grass that won't require bug spray, hiking boots, or any actual sweating. Let's get mildly wild. And then we have 5 ideas here. Read through them and think, based on what you know about Sharon, do all of these seem like things Sharon would like to do, or are any off base? I'll read a couple here. There is number 2, faceplant therapy. Just yeet yourself into the lawn face first. Bonus points if you scream, "I'm grounded," while doing it. And number 4, Mud Angel. Wait for a proper downpour, then find a gloriously squelchy patch of ground and sculpt a mud angel with worm-loving joy. Let the ooze soak into your soul and socks. What do we think? Is Sharon going to like all of these ideas? Some, but not others? Let's take a look at what Sharon actually thought. Here's a screen recording of the Sharon bot reviewing this text. I'll show you close-ups in a moment. You can see how quickly she works through that. And as I expected, maybe you two, it seemed that she did not really like the idea of squelchy ground, which I was not familiar with the term squelchy. I had to look that up. It sounds like something Sharon and I both would not enjoy. She began by saying, "Oh my gosh, I loved this. It completely understands my desire to engage with nature on my terms from a safe-ish distance." And then she breaks down her thoughts about the individual elements in the article, and we see she likes it for the most part, but importantly, she did not like number 5. So we, in our test to see, is she going to accurately pick out something that will not resonate with our ideal reader? She aces it. It said Mud Angel. Okay, now you lost me a little. Mud is where bugs thrive. That's where they build condos. I'll wave from the porch in my clean shoes. But the rest of it she enjoyed. You can see at the end she'd say, only tweak I'd make, maybe swap Mud Angel for something a little drier, or at least include a disclaimer like, only attempt if you have immediate access to a warm bath, clean socks, and emotional support. Otherwise, chef's kiss. That is my very quick overview of what you can do when you can build an AI chatbot that can be a simulation of your ideal customer, your ideal reader, or when we're talking through ideas, Kristen thought, I hope you don't mind if I share this, Kristen, that maybe she could come up with avatars for some authors. My gosh, I should have asked if that was okay to share, to run ideas past to them to see what they think. Of course, obviously getting permission for any kind of use involving someone's intellectual property and text, whatnot. We're all good people here and we want to be ethical. There are lots of ways you could use this. That is my point that I'm getting with. And if you have any ideas that spring to your mind, share them with the chat. Maybe we can all inspire each other here. And now we're going to get started with some questions. I have one here I want to ask first, and I'm going to get to what's in the Q&A box. Question number 1, I'm going to open this up to our other panelists. How do I stay relevant when authors can just run their writing through AI instead of going to a human editor? I imagine that's on the minds of lots of people here today. How can I stay relevant when authors can just run their work through AI instead of going to a human editor? Who would like to take that first? And if it's all right with you, I'm going to go ahead and unshare the screen so we can see each other better.
I can dive in. I think this is one thing that certainly kept me up at night when I first started learning about these tools. I'm sure I'm not the only one. In my experience, well, okay, so I think there are two answers to this. One is that authors don't always know what to ask the tools to do. I mean, consistency checking is a perfect example of this. They don't know what they don't know. And it's our job to educate them, and tell them, demonstrate our utility. I also find a lot of authors don't want to get in the weeds. They want to keep creating stories. They want to hand the detailed stuff off to us. They don't want to be fussing with an AI tool. I think there's also enough concern, legitimate concern about things like hallucinations and errors, that they do want someone who knows the stuff to be driving the tools. I also think that leaning into kind of the human element that we bring to our editing is smart. So offering coaching, offering a follow-up Zoom session, making sure your comments are supportive, right? So that's exactly why instead of just sending that report that Claude generated to my client, I took the time to go into the manuscript and say, here are all the places where I think you need to apply this, and here's what I think you can do. I'm saving her some kind of brain work so she can reserve her creativity to thinking about, oh, I can do this, but also sharpen up Blade's characterization at the same time, right? Without having to worry about like the details of the consistency stuff. So I think that's, those are my tips on that front. Marcella, what do you think?
I was gonna, I agree with what you say. I would add, one of the things is that AI is just a tool. It's like anything else. And if you don't know, if it gives you results, you still have to know whether the results are correct or not. It's just a tool. So I think like editing reference lists, that will AI will take over that, I think, because it's just, it's just such rote work. But you still need to know the styles. You still need to be able to look through what AI produces. Did it give me the right results? So that's my take. That's my input on that.
Excellent points. Thank you for those. I have a nuts and bolts question directed to Marcella.
Okay.
This was asked multiple times, so I think that we have some people who are wondering, about this. Can you ask for the changes to be tracked in Word when you're doing the type of editing you are showing us, Marcella? Or do you have to compare documents to get a tracked version?
ChatGPT used to have something called Edit GPT.
Oh,
That
it's back
it
actually.
is back, but it
Yep.
doesn't do what it used to do. It
Oh.
used to like, it used to do just like track changes. And last time I used it, maybe it's changed again. It doesn't do that. It just like highlights what red and green. That's what I saw in the, and again, it could have changed. But if you would put Edit GPT as an extension to your Chat GPT, it could show track changes. I think using the compare documents is the best way to go. Or if you have if you have a client, like just have a client and they don't care, they want to see the good references. They don't care if they see the track changes. So that's, but yes, unfortunately, there isn't, right now, I have not found a way to, to input my results to, my Word file showing the track changes unless I do the compare the two documents.
Oh, you're muted, Erin.
There we go. Thanks for answering our nuts and bolts question. I found that even when you have to compare documents in Word or in Google Docs, because you save so much time in the formatting and editing part, it is still very worth it. I know that some people do have restrictions with version controls at their work, and that kind of gets them hung up and makes this less valuable, but hopefully you can talk your boss into show the utility and efficiency that this brings, and maybe that'll help your argument there. A
I'm just
question, yes.
bring one thing. There's a tool called Draftsmith that's by the owners of Perfected, and that I haven't used that for references. So you can't create your own prompts, but that works really, really well with Microsoft Word. Your track changes are right there, and they're your changes. So you can use that more for like proofreading, editing. I mean, it's a paid subscription, just like Perfected is, but it works really well with Microsoft Word.
I found especially if you're doing line editing, going line by line through something, Draftsmith does offer very helpful suggestions, and it's super easy to incorporate them since it's right there in Word if you work in Word, as many of us do. Question for Kristen. I was also fascinated by the Chekhov's gun example. That's one that I hadn't thought to try, and I'm excited to now. But this is related to that. Regarding Chekhov's gun, have you tried the kind of opposite? If something is used in Act 3, was it introduced earlier?
So I haven't tried that. I actually think that would work brilliantly. What I have done with mystery novels in particular is I've had Claude kind of do a report for me of all of the clues and red herrings and kind of what I call breadcrumbs, like kind of clues for clues, like things that our readers will realize they were a clue, but you're trying to you're trying to kind of sneak it in there. List all of those out by chapter, kind of so I can check it. And also, you can ask it. This is kind of where I feel like I don't often ask it, like, do you think this can be better? Because I consider that my job. The other caveat I will say is particularly in fiction is like Claude wants to steer everything to like the most generic, the most cliched, and that's not your job, and it's often not what the author wants. So I tend to like kind of ask for reporting rather than opinions. But I think it absolutely could do that, and I think that's a great use case.
I think we've got time for one more, if it's all right with you.
Yeah.
Um, I think this could go to either of you, so whoever feels inspired. It says, basic question here, but though I don't think this is basic, Allison. Uh, this is something on a lot of people's minds. I'm exploring the use of AI to edit software user guides. More power to you. The company allows the use of Claude. Would I need to first feed Claude my style sheet, then feed in the content chapter by chapter in PDF form?
I don't work with Claude, but I would say, I mean, the style sheet, yes, definitely feed that in. I, I use Word, so that's how, and I'm not sure how I work with PDFs. Do you know, Kristen?
Yeah, I mean, and I saw this as another question. So, Claude actually will take a lot of inputs in a lot of different ways. So you can upload an entire Word document or an entire PDF. It can work with those. You can also, for example, like the example I showed you, I just, copied and pasted chapters 42 to 46 of that novel I was working in and pasted it in there. And actually it shows as like a cute little like graphic chunk. It kind of turns it into something that looks like an attachment. So it's not cluttering things up. I do think that could be the way to do that. I would create a project for that project, and give it some instructions about what it is that you want to change. If you put it in PDF form, again, you want to tell it what kind of output do you want? Do you want it to revise the text? Because it absolutely will. It will give you a whole document that you can copy and paste. It will have revised the text according to your specs, and then you can paste that into whatever tool you want. Or it can analyze it and give you a list of changes it thinks that you should make. I find just getting in there and experimenting, at first, it's not going to save you time because there's a learning curve. But pretty quickly, you're going to get a sense of how things work and how to word things and phrase things. And the great thing about this too is like, you can just keep talking to it. So if it pops up something that's not what you want or not what you expected, you can just stay in the same chat and say, actually, I want this. And you can, if you go to that sample chat, I have there, like you can see me doing that. Like I'm realizing in real time in that chat that, oh, I need to add some more chapters in there. And then I forgot to add the material. And it very politely said, I could do this once you paste in the extra material. So, so just get in there and experiment.
I want to say, yeah, experimenting is the best way to learn. It really is. It takes time. There's a learning curve, but once you experiment, you're like, wow. And then you realize, for your mundane tasks, how much time you can save.
I would say that that sums it up. Just get in there and experiment, and then it's like, wow. That's that is what my experience has been working with these tools, figuring it out, and then it's just like, wow. I hope that you have wow experiences with AI ahead of you and that you have found this hour of exploration and experimentation inspirational and wow moment worthy. Go forth, my friends. Try something new. I can't wait to hear about what you do. Thank you so much for joining us for our first AI for Editors webinar. And hope that we can do this again. And we'll see you at some point in the future. Thank you and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.